Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, Mr. Luis F. Rodriguez Mendizabal, joins us from Europe, where it is a Sunday and it's an early morning. And yet, he's been patiently waiting to give us his guidance into what it means to be a cashew kernel supplier to the European Union. So at the very outset, can we please give a round of applause to our speaker for making this effort and taking the time out to address her here at WCC. A big warm welcome to you, sir. We hope we are audible to you. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker talking to us about corporate sustainability and due diligence regulations with a specific focus on European Union, Mr. Lewis has worked as a program officer at DG International Partnership of European Commission in Brussels. He's a part of the Sustainable Agri-Food Systems Unit as a focal point for farmers' organization and the European Union initiative on cashew. As he talks to us, ladies and gentlemen online, do hold on to your questions and comments towards what he has to share. Over to you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone from Brussels. And it's really a pleasure to be with you this morning. I will have loved really to be with you, but well, logistical problems prevent me. But I'm happy to address you and give you some hints about this what we think is an important piece of legislation. But first of all, before starting, I would like to have a couple of disclaimers. First of all, I work for the European Commission on the Director General for International Partnerships. So it means that it is the branch of the European Commission who engage with partner countries for win-win partnerships, development. And this directive and this legislation is hosted, well, it's a legislative process which stems from the European Parliament and the European Council, and is hosted as well in another Director General, which is the Director General is for Justice. So all the legislative process and the official say of the European Union on this specific legislation is from another department. And on the other side as well, as you know, the world is changing very fast, and very probably in the next days, additional legislation with the aim of streamline and make processes more easy for companies are gonna probably impact this legislation. So in this in this slide, I won't spend too much time on the content of this legislation as such, because it could change. But I'm gonna still keeping talking about the basics. I would like to talk a little bit about what I think what is the main purpose of this presentation, what for a cashew stakeholder would means, and in the end I would like to introduce ourselves that we're building little by little this EU initiative on cashew because of the big potentialities of the sector. So if we can start with the presentation. This is let's say a corporate presentation, which, as I said, it could change a little bit. So I wouldn't stick too much to it. So I'm gonna a little bit talk about what I think is the most important things. So we're talking about this corporate sustainability due diligence directive. Actually, what's most important to retain is that this piece of legislation establishes the duty for companies in scope to identify and address potential and actual adverse human rights and environmental impacts in their own operations, in those of their subsidiaries, and in their chain of activities, as well as their business partners. It's not a lot of companies who are going to be subjected to it, but it's going to overstretch to their operations. So in the end, more or less all the sector will be impacted by this. So this is a little bit the most basic concept of this legislation. Then, so why this legislative process? Well, it aims to have it aims about along the Green Deal objectives. It looks for having a less impact on the environment, more human rights protected, but as well to make companies more competitive It's a call as well for co-legislations to have a balanced level field in terms of legislation. Some member states of the European Union have legislated on this, some of them not, so that creates a blanket for them. And its aim as well is to promote a more significant and true engagement between partners and stakeholders. Just remind, this is about the European Union access market. It doesn't mean that Europe overstretches on all other markets. That's for operations that impact the European market. Another basics of this legislation, it's the scope. I think so. It means it is just aimed for very large companies who have more than 1,000 employees and 450 euros of revenue in the European Union. Well, there is a set of eligibility that I'm going to forward you in the address to check on all of this. This is the personal scope, and as I said at the beginning, it doesn't, well, it touches the responsibility are these largest companies, but as well it touches their subsidiaries and the business partners when they operate on their behalf. So that's what we say the personal scope. The material scope. So the material scope is actually a set of human rights and environmental impacts that are established in the annex of this legislation, and which is important to retain is actually that there is no new requirements. It's actually already existing standards from the OECD, from the UN, from the ILO, which up to now has been voluntary, which with this piece of legislation will become mandatory to access the EU market. So, and again, all the details could be found in the technical addresses that I'm gonna forward to you right at the end of the session. So if we can advance a little bit. So as I said, the basic for this legislation is this duty for these large companies to identify and address these potential negative impacts and how to address them. So this is based on a risk-based approach and based on taking appropriate measures. If we can advance, please, on the presentation. There is, of course, a large process that's about the scope of the directive. And in the second paragraph, you will see the obligations of this legislation in terms of the process. And if you advance as well for the next slide, it's all about the process that is more technically explained in the technical documents. So it's all about this process of due diligence and establish appropriate actions. And as I say, there is an ongoing process to streamline this process that will be published and probably will affect all these processes. So that's why I'm not explaining it very thoroughly. So this is a process to reduce the burden limitations. As well, what is important to understand as well is that contrary to other legislations like the EU Deforestation Regulation or other ones that have had a little time to implement, this one is actually, we have a period from 3 to 5 years that again could even become longer. But we still have 3 to 5 years to adapt to this legislation, so you have time enough to address it. And in this time, there is a set of guidelines and accompanying measures that we're going to be deploying and discussing with stakeholders. So it's going to be a process. Okay, so you can advance, please. And well, there is some aspects about the enforcement of this legislation and the questions about civil liability, who again, actually, we probably will be modified. So I think it's better to wait before going more deep into that. So if we can advance a little bit more, as I said, things could change on the details of this, but there is, I will say, a couple of things that that won't change, and this is the core elements of this due diligence obligation, and this new element to access EU members, to access EU markets. So it's something that is, I think, important from the audience. One of the main consumer markets is going to switch its requirements for entry from these voluntary guidelines to mandatory in a reasonable time. So it's the time to dig in it, and it's the time to do that. For the cashew industry, I think some considerations about this legislation, that once again, this is a blanket legislation that covers all sectors, all value chains, minerals, all agriculture, all kind of agriculture. So it's very, very, very wide. It's not focused on cashew, but it's going to have an impact on cashew because of the EU is a big consumer market, and because of all the considerations of the value chain. Well, we consider as well that it will require a bit of time and investment. The scope is yet to be defined, but as I said, this is not real new requirements. Are already standards that are present, that a lot of players are already aware or dealing with them. As well, the legislations encourage industry or multi-stakeholders initiatives to help this compliance, to support the industry as a whole on it. An example of these groupings could be the Sustainable Nuts Initiative that is going to intervene later in the conference. And well, despite of all of these apparent constraints, we really see this as for cashew as an important opportunity in terms of expanding the sustainability of the industry, expanding the traceability. That's why we're actually building on this, not only to create this EU initiative on cashew, which we'll speak a bit later, and as well, this legislation is actually, we consider it positive for the companies in order to prepare for future risks in terms of regulation of reputational risk, in terms of eventual claims on sustainability, on social issues. And we would like to make a little parallel with what has happened in the past decades with the food safety. It's something like introduces new concepts of sustainability, of social fairness, that are going to become, we hope as well, the true standards of tomorrow. So this legislation and how the regulation will implement, we consider this as a streamlined process toward this. As I said, well, the legislation as well includes some accompanying measures that we're going to develop along our member states, along with other stakeholders. We are deploying what we call the Team Europe initiative, so it's to band together efforts from the European actors, fundings, lines of fundings or support. We are setting up an EU help desk to address the development of this legislation, and we're looking for partnership with main stakeholders. That is going to be, as I said, is a smooth process that will take in the next years. We can advance a little bit. So this is a set of companion measures that are going to be deployed at different levels on this legislation or initiative. But in parallel, especially from our Director General for International Partnerships, we have pre-identified the cashew value chain and the cashew in general as a very promising investment path for our objective win-win partnership with our partner countries. So that's why we're setting an EU initiative on cashew with the objectives of having, for reinforce our partner countries, for having more sustainable, more competitive production in their respective countries, all across Africa, or for example Cambodia as well. And we would like to take advantage of what we see a growing flow, little by little, of direct influx of transform of kernels from Africa to Europe, for having this increasing flow to take advantage to make it the industry as a whole more sustainable, more fair. In that ways, we actually support all the efforts for having better and more sustainable production in partner countries, and as well we actually support to promote a more local processing from all kind of factors in producing countries. For to do that, we have a set of different interventions, different tools. For example, we are the main donors of the GIZ Competitive Cashew Initiative, which I think quite a lot of you are aware of it. We support as well large initiatives as the GIZ as well in Cambodia. We have bilateral programs in many partner countries. For example, in Africa, from Gambia, Senegal to Mozambique, all across the producing countries in Africa, we have this initiative, and we are actually increasing our investments in sustainable production, in research, in encouraging local processing. All of this as a technical assistant. We are mobilizing as well financial tools as the European Investment Bank, who is actually designing or co-designing large programs to support, for example, Ivory Coast government. We are mobilizing as well financial partners, impact funds to look for actually co-investments or guarantees for investments. And last but not least, we're doing an effort in bilateral policy dialogue with main countries to support them to adapt their policies and legislations for a more competitive and for a more sustainable cashew industry. So we are actually betting high on the cashew as a driver of impact. And this corporate sustainable legislation offers us an additional path in partnerships with you to have, at least for the market of the EU market, of all the kernels that we end up in the cashew markets, a push for more sustainability, and as well a push for more competitiveness for companies. So, well, that's a little bit the message, the main message. We have time, but it's something that we will really, all the stakeholders have to invest on it. And based on that, but many other factors, the EU is committed to step up funds on the sector and materialize all this potential that cashew has for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis.